Hello and welcome back to the Comic Lyric Podcast, the podcast that does deep dives into the best, worst and middest of comic books, graphic novels and sometimes mangas. I'm your host, the soon-to-be known as Comic Stan, and with me as always is my reigning co-host, it's Jamie.
You sound like every primary school teacher I hated in school.
I figured you might have a response like that, and the reason that I'm starting off this way is because I'm probably going to get very loud and belligerent as this episode goes on.
Is this your baseline?
I thought we'd start at a very soft, low level, because by the end, I might be shouting and screaming at how awful
I'm going to be honest
this week.
You get really angry when I come in low energy, and you've just done it.
But I've done it for a bit, and that's that's a different.
I just felt the energy in the room. The cat stopped doing what she was doing.
Yeah,
the whole room deflated.
It drew the attention in. People are like, "Why are they speaking so quiet?" Plus, the music will be loud first, so then it'll go into me like soft. But what I might do is I might actually bring the music down first, because normally they fade into each other. So I'm gonna bring it down to silence first, and then I'm gonna come in like, hello and welcome to
this is fascinating listening, Ryan.
Yeah, people
what
love
are we talking about
scenes
today?
Well, we're talking about a pretty awful comic, and that's rich coming from me, because normally I'm the defender of
you
comics.
Are, yes.
I started this, I tell you, my stages through this one were very much this is awful. And then by the end, I was like, this is awful. Like, I enjoyed how bad it was by the end.
It's train crash viewing, isn't it?
It became a bit like The Room of comic books for me by the end. Clarify, you've seen the title, we're doing Spider-Man Reign, which I think is going to potentially, and find out to confirm this, might knock One More Day off the peak. It might stop the reign of One More Day as the worst Spider-Man comic.
I think it will. So how are you, Ryan?
Having just recently finished this comic, I'm not in a great mood.
No.
But actually, no, tell a lie, I'm excited to tear it apart. That's the mood I'm in right now. How about yourself?
I had one of my colleagues from my day job sat with me while I was finishing this comic after we finished work, and she saw the look on my face. She knew I wasn't having a good time. So I have an update.
You have two pieces of information.
Yes. So somebody wrote in after last week's episode.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out they work for the government.
Wow. And we are knowing big people in big places.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're really reaching every corner of society. And they explained to me that all government buildings now have unisex toilets.
Good to hear.
And that he says, complete with hand wash stations in the cubicle. And so, everyone just cracks on. Now, I should have known this, Ryan, because I work for the local council and they have unisex bathrooms.
You just never click on. It's like, why am I the only guy in here?
I don't go into the office very often, dude.
I mean, that's the way nowadays, isn't it?
The second update, a thing has started happening to me in a shop that I frequent.
You frequent the shop?
I frequent it.
Right.
I collect Pokemon cards, and this shop sells Pokemon cards.
God, what a nerd.
I know, right? So sometimes with my grocery order, I will buy a pack of Pokemon cards. What has started happening is one of the blokes behind the counter has just taken to giving me Pokemon cards. Doesn't expect me to pay for them. I don't know why he does it.
I feel like you've really outed him when the manager could be like, that's where the Pokemon cards are going. Because obviously the manager listens to the show.
Well, absolutely.
That's what I mean.
As we've established, people from every echelon of society listen to the Comic Literate podcast. But I went to this shop to buy some milk and eggs. Because I made you some... It's pancake day. I made you some pancakes.
You made me a delicious pancake after I'd come back from just having pancakes. So I'm on a double pancake high right now.
Absolutely. But I decided it's pancake day. I'm going to have some pancakes for dessert. And so I have...
Just a quick one. Do Americans have Pancake Day?
No, it's Shrove Tuesday.
They might think we sound ridiculous, but like, Pancake Day?
So in England, we only have pancakes once a year, my American
If you have it outside of Pancake Day, you are not executed, but like it's pretty vicious.
You're exiled to Australia. That's what happens. They put you on a boat and send you to Australia. So we have them once a year. It's Shrove Tuesday, and it is the day before the first day of Lent. So the idea is you're meant to get rid of all your eggs and milk so that you can't bake anything during Lent. That's the idea.
If you're doing savoury pancakes, you can chuck everything else in there as well.
Yeah. I made some pancakes. We had pancakes. They were nice. But what I have here in front of me, Ryan, is free Pokemon cards. So I thought it would be fun. He's lying.
It's an empty crisp packet.
I thought it would be fun for me to catch my live reaction to my little gambling addiction that I have.
I mean, it's a more wholesome gambling addiction, so...
I don't think you've ever seen me do this, have you?
No. So, okay, let's go.
Okay, let's go. Right, I just showed Ryan that meme. He likes it. So, I don't know if you can still hear me, but we've got a Spinder, a Nimble, and a Lekid, a Vanillish, an Absol, a Masquerin, an Ancient Booster Energy Capsule, I don't know what that's for, a Snorant, a Minun, and a Latios regular holo. So we have nothing interesting.
100%. If I hadn't seen the cards, if I just heard the audio, I would assume you'd made all them up.
Really?
Yeah, because I'm a original 151 kid.
Yeah, I think the most recent thing here is Gen 2, Elekid.
We talked about it on the second ever episode of the podcast. Yeah, I recognize that one, actually.
Yeah.
We talked about it in the second ever episode when we did the Pokemon Adventures, but there's too many. There's too many. They shot themselves in the foot, because now every Pokemon is worth less, not worthless, worth less
than it used to be,
by there being so many more than originally was.
However, I'm making a living Pokedex from Pokemon cards. We've never talked about this on the podcast, but
by a living Pokedex, you mean just you who knows all the information?
Well, so no, a living Pokedex is something that you do in Pokemon games, where instead of just completing the Pokedex, you have one of each.
Right.
So instead of just getting a Bulbasaur and evolving it to Venusaur, and that's 1 through 3 done, you get a Bulbasaur, evolve it to Venusaur, breed a new Bulbasaur, evolve that into a Venusaur, and then breed a third Bulbasaur. So you have a Bulbasaur, an Ivysaur, and a Venusaur all in your box. That's a living Pokedex. I'm doing that with Pokemon cards because I'm fucking insane. And the Latios, I think, is something I did need for my living decks, so I am quite excited to go to that there giant binder and take out the little piece of paper with Latios written on it and put the card in.
I now know how you feel when I'm explaining superhero shenanigans. I've been on the other side, and it's not great.
Dude,
not great.
I'm the nerdiest nerd.
Yeah, I mean, it's why we do this. So
I feel like I had to get my nerd creds in there, though, because I don't often have...
didn't already, like we don't already have them. We do a comic book podcast. It's not like we're like high school jocks. Like, actually, I collect Pokemon cards as well. Like,
I don't know about the comic books, though, do I? Not really.
But the fact that you know more than the average person.
I definitely know more than the layman right now. This point.
You know more publishers than Marvel and DC.
I do. I also know that Spider-Man's spunk is radioactive, and that is a sad lesson I've learned.
And unfortunately, that is a segue. We will get to that later.
God.
Yep, we're gonna do it.
This one's so bad, Ryan.
But towards the end, it is so bad it's good. I'd posit it's the room of comic books, because they really tried to make a good one here, didn't they? You can feel the intention of like high end. It was almost trying to make it like high R, wasn't it? It was trying to make it like deep, and they just missed the mark so hard.
There's some really cool ideas in there.
There are, and I have highlighted the few bits I liked, because every one of those notes starts with, actually, I like this bit.
Yes, no, there was some really cool ideas, but as is now traditional, we're starting with the arting.
As is traditional, you say we're starting the arting, but I have I've got the information about the comic. As is traditional, because it happens every time.
Because you called it starting with the arting, and we don't starting with the arting ever.
No, when we actually start talking about it. This is just the preamble. This is just Spider-Man Reign, 4-issue comic book limited series featuring Spider-Man, would you believe, written and illustrated by I don't know how you pronounce this. So the first name it's a first name, and it's K-A-A-R-E. Is that Care or Car?
Care?
We don't know. We are ignorant. It's our fault. And I feel really bad, especially for mispronouncing their name after what I'm going to say about their work.
It's really piss poor.
Yeah.
Sorry, the cat just jumped from a door onto my shoulders and dug her claws in.
Parkoured across your back.
She just parkoured across my back.
So this Care Edwards wrote and illustrated this comic, so I feel doubly bad for him about saying.
I don't know that he did either.
I mean, it was an attempt, like I said. So set 30 years in Spider-Man's future. I'm not going to bother you explaining the blurb, because I think that'd be cruel and unusual punishment at this stage.
Yes.
30 years into the future, on Earth 70237. It features a retired Spider-Man who returns to combat the injustices of a vastly different New York City. Basically, it's Spider-Man: The Dark Knight Rises. But for anyone who knows, is a hardcore attempt at that.
I suppose it kind of is, isn't it?
Have you read Dark Knight Rises?
No, but I know what you mean.
So that, for anyone who doesn't know, that is a really good Batman comic where it's set into the future, and he's retired, but he comes out of retirement, and he's struggling to find his place in the current world now, and all that. That was good. That was a great one by Frank Miller.
As was Old Man Logan.
Exactly that as well. But this is so close to Dark Knight Rises.
Yes.
Like it looks like a parody almost.
Yes.
So saying all that, and Jesus, I've got publication history as well. Like, it was in the promotion for the comic that they likened it to Dark Knight Returns, not Dark Knight Rises. They likened it to Dark Knight Returns in the promotion for it. It's like, don't talk about a superior version of the comic you're about to release in the same conversation. It's... So yeah, it's and apparently as well, Marvel announced a sequel to Reign was set to release in 2024. So we're going to do this again.
Oh no, we're not doing it.
But the sequel could be better.
Ryan.
But it's modern, and then we can include it in the end of
the
end of year.
No, Ryan,
the end of year wrap-up.
You can't just make me talk about garbage.
I mean, it's hot garbage, and that's what makes it exciting.
You don't even pay me.
You're getting exposure. That's what you're getting paid in exposure.
No, I'm not working for exposure anymore. What am I being exposed to? Garbage.
We'll do some really good ones in and around it.
Okay.
To give you your fill. We'll make it a shit sandwich.
A shit sandwich, okay.
But with great bread. Whatever that is. So, and also the reception apparently was mostly positive by critics. Who are these critics? What did you read? Because it wasn't what I read.
Were they high?
They must have been. There's like, it mentioned some who were like, actually pointing out the flaws. I'm like, how are they the only one? Like, where is this mostly positive coming from? I do not understand.
Do you think Marvel just like, la 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 la, it's wonderful, la 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 la?
But the critics apparently, the people who maybe make a living out of saying what's good or what's bad, rated this positively, and I'm like, why? Why did you do that?
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I've got some great stuff. I've got a great bit to mention afterwards. But let's starting with the arting, as you say. You want to take lead on the art?
Yes.
I feel like this is more your domain.
It's crude.
Not only is it crude, it just looks off the entire way.
So it's aesthetically deeply unpleasing.
Yes.
Which I can get behind. Not everything has to be aesthetically beautiful for me to see the value in it. Like there is a magnificence in the grotesque.
Yes.
But this is not only grotesque, it's poor.
Yes.
In every facet of it. So this is like you've picked up a diamond, but the diamond's actually made out of excrement.
Yes.
And it's very well faceted, but every single one of those gleaming facets is still excrement. Like the faces are bad. The posing is bad. The sense of anatomy on Old Man Parker is bad.
Yeah. Big head, tiny body.
The cityscapes are bad.
The cityscape, so that's a particular one for me. All through, so when they're indoors, it's one style of drawing, which I would also criticize in itself as well.
Yeah.
But whenever they go outside, anytime it's outside, it's like a 3D 2000s, and this came out in 2007, so fair enough, but like a 2000s CGI, poor CGI, buildings and streets and sky. They've got this other style for everything that's outside. So when you've got characters who are outside, it's two different styles that have nothing to do with each other. They don't look connected in any way. It looks like you've taken a cutout of the character and glued it onto a completely different comic book. It just looks awful.
Yeah, so yeah, what you're articulating is that they're these very flat drawings of these characters existing in a 3D space. But what's worse than that is that there's no real sense of perspective in that 3D space. So you're looking at an attempt to make a three-dimensional space, but it's really flat because they haven't set the perspective in that three-dimensional space.
Yeah.
And if you draw, you'll know what I mean. I mean, like this panel here is just so like there's just.
It looks like everything's right up there.
Exactly, yeah.
Like right up to the frame, right up to the.
I mean, this is an even better example, isn't it? So it almost looks as right. What Ryan's saying is so right. The buildings look as though they've been rendered by a computer, but then the illustrations look very illustrated.
But the same computer that made the Scorpion King back in Mummy Returns.
Yeah, no, this looks like it was rendered on a calculator from the 80s.
Yeah,
it's just so poor. And then there's often, and this is something that I can forgive sometimes in comics, but there's often not even an attempt at background.
No, so when it's indoors, it's the same art style.
Yeah.
So why did they pick a different art style for the outdoors? And why is it so different? And it's like blurred and like not sharp. if that makes sense.
And then there's illustrations like this. So this is one that I sent to Ryan, and it's...
I literally took a picture of it before you sent it to me. I was going to bring it as well.
Everybody is like a sallow sepia-toned grey colour.
So I noticed this. It's like that in that first scene, and then it's not like that much after. So after this scene, everyone becomes more human-coloured.
Yes.
But they're all in this first scene, in this flower shop that Peter Parker works at for some reason. Everyone's grey. Everyone looks like they're jaundiced.
But they're not even grey. They're like a sepia-toned...
Like beige.
Do you know what? Do you know when they, in Europe, again, Americans, this won't make a lot of sense to you, just Google it. In Europe, particularly in Britain, I don't even know this, I don't even think this has happened in a lot of Europe yet. They decided that cigarettes had to be in plain packaging, right? And they did a lot of research to find the most unattractive colour to make cigarette packaging. And it's a deeply unattractive colour. And it's almost as though they've done that here. They've done research to find not even an enjoyable, like, blue, cool-toned grey. They've just gone for the worst, shittiest...
The bleakest colour.
Beigest colour, and then just plastered the first 5 pages with it. And so, people bought this.
Yeah, it did well, apparently.
People paid money, and they opened the first page when they got it out of the little bag from the comic book store, and they opened it, and it was that.
They're probably, like, they do this these days. I don't know if they did it back then. They normally do non-spoiler previews, which are literally, it's the art, but with the dialogue blanked out. Like, they do that nowadays. If they did that back then, you'd be looking at that like, what? Like, the first scene, you're like, what is this?
It's just so abysmal, Ryan.
It's baffling in the choices.
Yeah, and this is the thing, like, we've talked about stuff in the past where an attempt has been made and it's a big swing and a miss, but it's almost as though they weren't even trying.
I'm on the opposite side. I feel like it was an attempt to trying to do something unique.
But what were they trying to achieve?
Like a unique look. Like, I think they were trying to make it look different and stand out from other comics. But I think that was in harm to the comic by choosing a baffling looking style or like juxtaposition of styles. Like, it clashes. All the cartoon, the actual like proper drawn look, it looks so out of place.
Because you are so right when you talk about it. So this is one page.
Yeah, indoors.
Peter's in the flower shop. The very next scene, he's pink again.
Yes, and that's what I mean. As soon as they get out of the flower shop, that color is then the constant throughout the comic.
Yeah.
But for some reason, the first scene is just really, really beige.
Yeah. It is the first...
Actually, and I think he changed that color again in a later scene. It changes. The actual color of one character just changes throughout the comic as well.
And then, we talk about faces a lot.
Yeah.
Because, this is a medium that's human.
These are the worst faces I've ever seen.
I think they might... John Romita Jr., I'm sorry.
Yeah.
John Romita Jr., I am sorry, because this dude has reached the dizzying heights, I think, of potentially the worst comic book art I've ever seen. I don't know how else to describe it. We talk about posing with Spider-Man a lot, because there is a lot, like, you need to be able to pose Spider-Man really well. But look how poor that posing is.
Yeah, it just looks like a mangled mess of limbs almost.
So, yeah, exactly. He's contorted into...
And this is the thing. Spider-Man is known for great proportions. Even if they're unrealistic, they look spectacular. They look like Todd McFarlane specifically pioneered that when he took over. I think it was from John Romita Sr. Yeah, it just looks, his ribs sticking out, everything. Interestingly, I did hear this tidbit recently. Todd McFarlane, so his first cover art was one of the highest selling ones.
Yeah.
And what happened was, he took over the drawing, but John Romita Sr. at the time was basically, I don't know if it was official or kind of de facto, but he was like the creative, like specifically the art head of Marvel. Yeah. So a lot of Marvel comics at the time were coming under his house style. His style was becoming the house style, essentially.
Yeah.
And he was overseeing and also sometimes redoing people's art to make it his. Which I think he wasn't doing it out of nothing. Like, I think it was like the order from up high. Todd McFarlane kept having his changed over by John Romita Sr.
Right.
So eventually, what he did was he left it to the last minute to turn anything in, turned it in so all of it was in his style, like extremely his style, including the cover art. Romita Senior was like, I don't have time to fix this. Like, I can't do half and not do the other half.
Yeah.
We have to put it out. They put it out. He got a bollocking for doing that. And then that issue sold insanely well.
And then he got given a bit of creative freedom.
Yeah, and then he was like, oh, actually, we will leave it your way.
And Todd McFarlane's really highly regarded now, isn't he?
Yeah, and he after the Romita era, his era kind of came after. And that was Spider-Man in like the... You know, in the Romita, he was very kind of like, it was modeled after like real people, like ballet or something like that, where like, Tom McFarlane made like Spider-Man specific like body movements. Like you could only do this with your body if you were Spider-Man powered. He did that kind of stuff.
Absolutely makes sense. And I don't need posing to be realistic necessarily. I just need it to look good.
Yeah.
But also, I've just had a scan through the first 3 issues while we've been talking. Not a single set of eyes are looking in the right direction here, Ryan.
No, of course not.
Every single face we see, both eyes are looking different directions. Now, again, there are some human beings where that is, the de facto for them, and that's whatever it is. But that's not every single person in fucking New York, is it?
No, it doesn't help that a lot of the people's eyes are just dots.
They're just dots, or they're not present.
But not all. And that's even worse.
And then some of them have one eye that has a pupil and one that's a dot, and some people have one eye open and one eye closed. Like, there's just a hot mess throughout.
So just to show you an example, this is like one of the famous Todd McFarlane Spider-Man.
And it looks
so you can see big difference.
fantastic.
If you Google Todd McFarlane Spider-Man, you can see it's like one of the first response. But you can see it's like detailed. It looks unrealistic, but it looks interesting and attractive.
Like the head's a tiny bit out of proportion. The head's a tiny bit too big, but it's the Spidey head.
But it looks like
it
looks like a crazy superhero universe kind of look, which fits the tone. But yeah, two things I'll say about the art as well. One is, for some reason, the newsreaders have weird teeth. If you any page with the newsreaders, the teeth, it looks like a real life photo of teeth under the drawing.
And then their eyes are always shut, and it's just every single panel you look at, there's a new problem with it.
Yes.
And like, the mouths are all wrong, the eyes are all wrong, the face proportions are all off, but they're all off. Again, this is something I've really learned reading comic books, is that artists have styles. And so if you look at a certain artist's work and you're like, yes, all of his foreheads are a bit too big, you're like, well, that's his style, and that's okay. But all of these faces are off in different ways, Ryan.
Yep.
Like, aren't they? Like,
everyone, you're like, why did you do it like that? So the other point, and I think it would be the last point on the art, because I think this is worth doing. I had to check this, right? I've sent you an email with a link.
Yes.
If you'd open that now, I'll cut out the space while you're opening it up and having a look.
Oh, wow.
So I've sent you a bit of art from a recent comic written and illustrated by this comic book writer and artist. It's so much better, isn't it?
Yeah, loads better. I mean, very cartoony, but coherent.
Miles and miles improved from Spider-Man Reign, right?
Massive. So different artists.
These are screenshots from Erratic, which I think came out a couple years ago, and there's a new one I think came out this year even, by Care Andrews, written and illustrated, and it just looks like a normal comic.
In fact, it actually looks pretty good.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought we need to mention this, because I looked up, I was like, is he doing this art for his entire career? And I checked, and he's not. So he is capable of good art. He does a lot of good art. It makes his choices for Spider-Man Reign even more baffling when you think about it. But yeah, I thought it was important to mention he is capable of good art. And we need to bear that in mind as we rip apart Spider-Man Reign.
So there's a panel in the first episode, in the first issue of Erratic, where he gets it. He gets it right that. So you're seeing somebody's arm through an empty bottle of vodka, and you can see the distortion that the vodka bottle would cause looking through it on the image. Like, that's actually quite high level stuff.
Yeah, and you can see the kind of unique art style. Like, you can see like the style coming through the unique artist, but it also is coherent and looks attractive and looks like engaging.
Yes. So, moving on from the art, because I could be here all day.
Yes. Moving on to the story, which I have extensive notes on. I am going to need to tackle this in chronological order.
Yeah, no, I get it, because it's a hot mess.
Yeah, I've just got... I can't even really just talk about it as a normal story. Like, I don't think it warrants that. I've just got problems I've noted to just run through, essentially.
I'm going to be honest with you, the actual content itself didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Like, I mean, obviously I'm jumping forward quite a lot now, but like Venom's appearance,
that's a spoiler, but
didn't make any sense to me. Ryan, I don't care if I spoil this comic book. This deserves burning, not spoiling.
Yeah, I will say now I'm going to run through it chronologically, but I think we're going to, like, references are going to jump around, and it came out in 2007. I would not recommend reading this, so maybe don't, but if you really have to, go ahead, is what I'll say.
Yeah, this is it, but
it's worth reading if you want the aspect of what an awful comic book looks like and reads like.
Yeah, so essentially, the opening of the story
starts with the itsy bitsy spider, and how has other Spider-Man comics done that already? Because if they haven't, how have they not?
And it's such a heavy-handed attempt at profundity.
Yes,
is the thing. So the exact...
That's pretty much a good description for the whole story.
Yeah, absolutely. So it says, itsy bitsy spider climbed up the water spout. Down came the rain and washed the spider out. Up came the sun and dried out all the rain. And then there's one of the kids going, rain! R-E-I. So it says
it's a
rain.
Double meaning.
Yeah, and then there's one of the kids with rain in huge bold letters popping out of the actual speech bubble, saying rain as in a regnal rain, like a king's reign. And the Rain are the de facto kind of SS police force here, aren't they?
They are the government forces from V for Vendetta, which is the other thing that this basically rips off. Yeah. It's Dark Knight Rises and V for Vendetta. If you mash those two together and throw in Spider-Man, this is it.
And again, this, like, it's so heavy-handed and so much dystopian fiction has used this trope, because essentially the Rain are the SA.
Yes.
They're government bully boys, aren't they?
I want to make a point. Just because you mix two things together like that, that's modern creativity. Like, people, that's an absolutely fine thing. I'm not criticizing it for doing that. What I'm criticizing it for is doing it so heavy-handed that you can literally look at the bits in the story and go, that's Dark Knight Rises, this part's V for Vendetta. That's, like, it's a mix of ideas. Is meant to be, like, it makes something original, not a patchwork of the original things, just like a horrible looking quilt in the end.
Because I was seeing big chunks of 1984 in here.
Yeah, and then I think that's like V for Vendetta is like, that's carried over through that.
Again, so this is a very heavy-handed approach at creating a dystopian story.
Yes.
This is dystopian fiction.
This is like by the numbers dystopian future.
Yes.
Like a color by numbers dystopian future, like mysterious leader, tick, SAS, tick, beating random civilians for no reason.
Well, not the SAS, the SA.
I mean, who knows?
Just
maybe.
So the British Army don't turn up, Ryan meant to say
they might.
Well, I imagine they're a bit busy.
Or the SS.
I mean, I would hope the SS don't turn up.
No. I mean, if they do, we are not equipped for that kind of event.
What, to fight the SS?
Yeah, I'd say we're probably, because we're soy boy soft boys, aren't we?
Absolutely.
So we can't. Well, if there's a military call, I'm running to Canada
in their fucking Hugo Boss military leather jackets,
which do look good, unfortunately.
I know, it's such a shame, isn't it?
But yeah, it's literally like a tick box of like dystopian future. Do this, and this. There you go. And that's like the bare minimum this comic has done.
There's an underground resistance.
Yep.
And the regime of taking control of the media.
Yeah.
It's all in there. It's all there. But again, talking about, the regime taking control of the media, that is the central focus of 1984. And it's so beautifully parceled out and so intelligently dealt with that it's really impactful. Here it's just like, we've got this thing and it's on telly. It's just so heavy-handed, Ryan.
It's just news readers being like, all hail Rain.
I know. So anyway.
So that part of the Itsy Bitsy Spider, the narration, which is not even warranting speaking about how bad the narration is. It's such a minor part. It's not even worth it.
However, there is one expression I want to talk about.
I've got so many expressions. Like, go ahead.
So he talks about the fact that nursery rhymes are told to children, but they're really ways for adults to impart wisdom, which I get. Like, that is an astute observation about the function of story in our culture.
Yeah.
However, he talks about the specific things that all these old nursery rhymes are referencing. I did fact check them. Yeah. They're largely right. But he talks about, what's the egg on the wall?
Humpty Dumpty.
Humpty Dumpty. He refers to Humpty Dumpty. Where is it? he refers to Humpty Dumpty as a yolk-filled body broken on the floor. And I'm like, that's gross.
I mean, it's accurate, I guess.
Well, no, because once Humpty Dumpty's fucking broken, the problem is that the yolk isn't in him anymore.
Yeah.
He's not a yolk-filled body
so
anymore,
they're confusing the blood in the actual body they're watching getting beaten up to Humpty Dumpty, whose yolk would have ran out and not been there anymore.
Yeah, but again, it
wouldn't have filled.
But again, if they had actually really cleverly woven some nursery rhymes into this and actually used them as allegory, it could have been quite effective. But it just, as with this story the whole way through, it's so heavy-handed that at one point he says, "Sing the song, learn the rhyme, prepare yourself." It almost sounds like a fucking Calvin Klein advert.
It's trying to make it sound cool. They haven't found something cool and incorporated it. They're like, they've started with Itsy Bitsy Spider. It's like, well, let's continue that. Let's continue that with other nursery rhymes. It's like, this is cool, isn't it?
And again, it's so fucking heavy-handed that. So after this, we see basically some kids running away from the police. We find out later that they're like a resistance that's been started by James Jameson, right? But it then cuts to this really bad pair of eyes, and it says "a broken man." And then in a speech bubble, Parker? So, yeah, I get it, right? I get it. Old man Peter Parker is sad and does a menial job now.
Yeah. Also, he gets fired from his job at the flower shop.
The florist.
Flower shop. It's basically the same thing. Ooh, florist. Fancy Dan. Like, it's that Simpsons thing. Like, ooh, florist. So what do you call it?
A
flower shop.
Call it a car hole. But it's where you buy flowers, not cars. It's a car hole, Homer.
I call it a car hole. So he gets fired. Peter Parker's a genius. He is a genius who is like capable of making tech, and how can he not do a selling flowers at a flower shop job? Like,
well, he got the wrong
he's
flowers.
He's like, jeez, I hope Mr. Whatever his boss's name, like, I hope Mr. doesn't find out about it. He's like, Parker, you're fired, and your last check's out. It's like, oh shucks. It's like how desperately you want to make Peter Parker a sad sack in this, like a pathetic, pitiful character. And that's fine. Like, that's a fair enough intention because you want him to rise up above it. But to just be like, I don't know, he's in a shit job and he sucks at it. Like, could you not have come up with something like a little closer to the character, or even just a bit more interesting? It's, I don't know. I don't know why.
It kind of cuts from there
I'm at
to
the beginning of this, and I'm already
We're
distraught.
at the beginning of issue 1, and then it cuts to the Swami news reporters talking about this defense system they're putting around New York called the Web, and the fact that under this new regime, they've had 10 years free of superheroes.
But why is it called the Web?
Well, I wonder why. And this is from 2007, so some of the technical stuff is quite funny now. But, they're really heavy-handedly setting up this
thing is going to happen soon, and it's very important.
Yeah, and again, it's very obvious to us, being people reading a Spider-Man comic, they're like, supers are good. Supers generally are a positive thing.
Yeah, we've come into this. This is the prerequisite knowledge we have as Marvel fans reading this comic.
Totally right. But again, even, that was the Civil War comics, which I don't think are that great either. Civil War 2?
Civil War 2's so. Civil War 1 I really liked.
So is Civil War 2 the one where Carol Danvers and Tony Stark are feuding?
Yeah.
So even then, like, the way they set up this registration for superheroes...
That was the first one.
That was the first one?
Yeah.
That was pretty good.
Yeah. Great, like, it was a reason for all superheroes to be involved, because it affected them all.
Totally. But this, it's just, it's effectively the same thing, isn't it? But locally as opposed to, like, nationally.
I would say this is far less than that. This is just there's a big thing happening, it's a timer, and hopefully things will stop it before it happens. Like, it's just a really heavy-handed way of doing that, essentially.
But then they also set up a conference with the new mayor, who we establish, I think, in this issue. I'm just scrolling ahead to it. No, this happens in the next issue, so we'll talk about that later.
I would say there's a part where a kid or civilian, whoever's getting beaten up, and another kid is like sad about it and goes, "There's no one out there to help us, no one to save us, no one." And it's like, calm down. Like,
Peter Parker's walking away, holding himself in his jacket at this point.
It's just, again, heavy-handed is the phrase we're going to use all the time, because this is it's just that all the way through. It's so lacking in subtlety. It's just direct, straight to the idea, just out there, blank. Like, if you miss it, it's like being hit by a train with this metaphor and with this meaning. It's like you can't It's terrible. It's just terrible.
And then, they even go so heavy with it. Like, hailed by the people of this city. Now, hail is a word.
Context is not great.
Yeah, exactly. He's a true American hero. And then we cut to a scene where he's got somebody, and you might be able to contextualize this for me. The creature that he's got on an IV.
I have no idea. It never comes up again. I don't know who that... I forgot about that, and I thought at the time, I was like, I wonder who that's going to turn out to be.
Well,
no one!
I was hoping you'd know who that was, Ryan.
I have no idea. I thought it was going to be revealed. They dropped that. They just completely forgot.
So the mayor is eating a steak in front of this withered creature that he's had trapped on an IV for 10 years.
I can't think who that is.
Well, this is the thing, right? I assumed you'd be like, oh, that's XYZ character from this run of Spider-Man.
The only thing I think... So I have a suspicion. I think I might know who it is. They've not been obvious with it, and it's related to something that happens later. So put a pin in that if you can, and I'll try and remember to come back to it later when we get to the point. I might know who it is. But again, it doesn't tell you. It doesn't explicitly tell you at all.
And then we cut to...
Which is crazy for how obvious every other aspect of this comic is, that they didn't... It's a mix of 75% heavy-handed, open, this is the story, this is the meaning, do you get it yet? And then it's 25%, oh, we forgot to explain this part.
Yeah.
How do you do both of those things?
Well, this is the issue with it consistently. And then it does this really this could have been so exciting and interesting, particularly within the context of American culture. We cut to the mayor's press conference, and he says, as you know, the web system requires the removal of any large metal ornaments to our buildings. This includes church bells, crosses, metal statues, all items that could reduce the power of the web system. Now, one of the key things that happens in any dictatorial government is that they take control of whatever the kind of state religion or the national religion is. And so the taking away of church bells and crosses and, ornaments on buildings.
Yeah.
All of those things are very churchy. And so this is this could have been used as this really interesting, subtle way of denoting that this is a dictatorial government. This is dystopia.
No other powers can exist. Not even religion.
You no longer even have the option to ring a church bell so you can all congregate.
Yeah.
Right? But it's just kind of left there, wallowing in this mess and not really contextualized. If I'd have just seen them taking church bells and idols away, I'd have been like, wow, that's...
Yeah, a subtle reference.
That's like Fahrenheit 451.
Yeah.
That's really powerful stuff. Fahrenheit 451 is about book burning.
Yeah.
And so, that would have been really powerful. Or, the kind of the revisionist history that the pigs engage in Animal Farm, where they're constantly changing the rules that they wrote on the wall at the start of the revolution, right? I don't know if you've read an Animal Farm.
No, but I get what you mean.
And so, and again, part of 1984 is this sense of revisionist history. We were at war with the East Asians, but now we're at war with the West Asians. But we're always at war with the West Asians. It was never the East Asians kind of thing.
Yeah.
And this happens a lot in dystopian fiction, and they're trying to play with it here, just not doing it.
I think so. Without saying it, do you know what the reason they did this for in the comic?
So it doesn't mess with the web.
No, so the real reason. So I sense you don't, and we're going to hold on to that because it's related to the ending.
This is the bell ringing in the fourth issue, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's kind of connected to that. I didn't pick that up when I first read it. I'm only making the connections now. But in the same way, I suspect that might have been it might have been completely accidental.
Yeah.
I think the real reason, which is revealed later, might have been the only reason they did that.
Right.
And it might be pure coincidence that they've accidentally done something almost meaningful.
I'm giving them more credit. So,
maybe, possibly. I mean, it might have been intentional, but I'm just saying it doesn't feel like it's intentional.
So realistically, the only interesting things that happen in the rest of this issue are that Peter Parker has a weird conversation with dead Mary Jane.
Which is very cliched.
Yep, super cliched.
Oh, he feels guilty about her dying because she's still young and you can't see her face and she's not talking back. Very cliched.
Super boring. And then old man Jonah Jameson. Jameson turns up.
Now, I like his depiction here.
Well,
as a JJ fan, this hits the right notes.
He's the only character with a particularly believable motivation.
Yeah. And he's brash and he's angry, but his heart's in a good place. I've always liked that depiction of J. Jonah Jameson because it makes it more interesting that he was the biggest critic of Spider-Man.
Yes.
And the best way they explain that in the comics is that he had either some incident or some past thing where he had a distrust of people in masks, a mugging or something like that. And with Spider-Man, it's not that the best depiction of him is he's not denying that Spider-Man is like attempting good or doing good, but they can't trust him because there's no accountability for this person. We don't know him. We don't know what he's doing.
And it's really interesting because do you know much about the Fourth Estate?
I mean, I know what the Fourth Estate is, but...
Yeah, so for anyone that doesn't, the Fourth Estate is the name we used to have for print media. So the news media used to be called the Fourth Estate, and the idea was that, particularly in Britain, they would hold everybody else accountable. So if you were publicly doing a practice that was in any way wrong, the Fourth Estate would hold you accountable. And in the 50s and 60s, there was this real sense that the Fourth Estate were doing this work and that they were holding people accountable and that they were giving the people the truth, right? That really stopped being the case in the 80s and 90s with like phone tapping scandals and all that bullshit, News of the World, Kim Piers Morgan, like the news got real mucky. But in the 20th century, when this character was conceived of originally, the Fourth Estate was held to a really high ideal. And I love Jameson as a representation of that in Spider-Man.
The thing is, nowadays, the modern representation, he's more... the Bugle is considered more of like a tabloid, almost,
yes,
but still with some like decent reporting. Like it's put down as a tabloid because it's trying to put down like, oh, this one paper keeps criticizing Spider-Man. Oh, it's because it's a tabloid. Like I don't know what the reason for that is. I've always liked to say that JJ criticizes him.
Again, the idea of like tabloids and broadsheets is a very British thing.
Yeah, well, now American tabloids, I think, I don't know if they're an export from here or not, but they definitely are in full force over there now.
I don't really know what the American relationship with print media is like at the moment.
It's more like cable news these days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is the thing, isn't it? So he's sold the Bugle off, and the Bugle is actually the news channel that we're watching.
Yeah, which I like that, I guess. Like, it's interesting turnabout, isn't it?
I mean, it's a relatively convenient way of showing the corruption of the power structures.
Yeah.
And it really shows, because, I'm a bit of a socialist. I believe that state-owned things are good. I believe it's really important for the state to own certain things. Don't think it's important for them to be in control of the Fourth Estate, which is what's happened here.
Yeah.
And it's a really convenient way of telling us not only did they create something that competed with the newspaper, they fucking bought it. Right? And so, again, it's a shortcut.
It's surprising that there's this amount of interesting stuff coming from this comic. Like,
I said up top.
Is this because it's just this is 1984 borrowing, essentially, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting here is that they've like the art's shit with the story. It's
an earnest attempt to making something good
at the core of this.
There is
something interesting.
This is why I call it the room of comic books. They were going for something really lofty and really high, and the execution was just dog shit.
Yeah, because at its core, there's some really interesting ideas. I like dystopian fiction.
Yeah.
And people like dystopian fiction. Like, one of the most popular movie franchises of this era in the noughties was The Hunger Games. That's children's fiction, but it's dystopian young adult fiction.
Young adult. I'm not even a reader, but it's young adult.
Yeah, it's dystopian young adult fiction, and it was incredibly popular. And I love dystopian fiction. I'm a huge fan of George Orwell. But again, there's something really interesting at the core here, but the way it's handled, don't buy into.
No, not at all. I don't know what more to say about even that part. I feel like we've gone into too lofty a conversation for this comic. Like, it feels like it's not earned, this discussion, if that makes sense. I mean, because they've just copied it from V for Vendetta in 1984, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, it plays with some big ideas.
Yeah.
And this is the thing, it plays with some big ideas that are really well informed by not only really great dystopian fiction, but also history.
Yeah.
And so something that happens sort of halfway through issue 2, there's some skirmishes, not a lot happens in the start of issue 2, but we meet another super.
I was going to say, before we get to that, I'll lightning round a couple more bits.
Okay.
Because I just made the small notes, I think, from here on. With great responsibility comes great power.
Yeah, I noticed that.
I was like, all right, fine, I'll give you that. Like, it's a clever reversal. It means something. It literally means the opposite of the quote, even though you've just as easily just reversed the words, like the main words.
Yeah.
That's smart. Like, I'll give you that. But smart in a way where I'm like, that's cute. Like, it works. And I'm surprised no one's done it before now. And if they have, it's probably not good that you've taken that. But if you've come up with it originally, great. Good job. And then we get to, I think, an interesting another rip-off here. So my next note, so I don't know if you get anything in between. I'm at the Sinner 6 part.
Yeah.
Where they do a Suicide Squad rip-off. And the
what are we, some kind of Suicide Squad?
They put bombs in the bodies of what was the Sinister Six, but they had to rename the Sinner Six for some reason.
Well, that happens just after J. Jonah Jameson is in the street, having gone and found Peter.
Yeah.
To help him.
To try and, like, get him back.
He's then distributing Daily Bugle newspapers calling him the Masked Menace. And I'm like, why have you done that? His actions just don't make a whole lot of sense here.
But is that... I don't know. I mean, maybe they're old Bugle issues.
No, because it's the photo of old man Parker with his broken arm.
Okay, so that's after he's punched JJ after saving him.
Yeah.
He's wearing the mask and boxers.
Yes.
I tell you what I did like about that.
With an arm cast.
Yes.
Because he's broken his arm.
Yeah, somehow. Because he's got Spider-Man powers. How has he broken his arm? That's crazy.
When he got knocked over, he broke his arm,
But he shouldn't have. Like, the powers should not have cancelled out, or they should have stopped working. Yeah, because he does all the stuff later. But what I did like, and I will credit this as one of the few things I liked, as soon as he puts the mask back on and he starts Spider-Manning again, he reverts. It's a verb.
Spider-Manning.
He reverts. No, because there's a hyphen, so you can't do that with that one.
All right.
I'm trying to.
Standards.
I keep trying to drag you to being grammatically correct. I feel like you're fighting me every way on it. You know.
You.
Yeah. It's fine. I'll allow it.
I are going to fall out.
I'm saying you don't have to. It's fine. So. Spider-Man. As soon as he starts,
smug look on your face.
As soon as he starts
Spider-Man, smug look on your face.
The listeners don't know what you're talking about. So. The second that he puts on the mask and starts Spider-Manning again, I do like that he reverts immediately back into the quippy old Spider-Man.
Yeah.
I like that. Like, it reinforces that idea in reality of, like, when people wear masks, they do assume, like, it's so easy to assume another identity and another, like, almost personality because you feel hidden by the mask. For him, it's putting back on the mask. He jumps back into the personality that he presented as Spider-Man. So I really like that part. That is consistent throughout the story as well. Like, when he's normal Peter Parker, he's this old sad sack one, mask back on, quippy Spider-Man back. So I like that part. Now I will credit it for that. But then, Sinner 6, we get the Suicide Squad ripoff. J. Jones says he's handing around the newspapers with Masked Menace. I guess it's maybe just like hey, look, the menace is back. You better watch out, government or Rain or whoever.
And it all gets a bit Oliver Twist at this point because he then has a bunch of kids with newspaper bags distributing them for him.
Well, that's his resistance, isn't it? It's like, they're all homeless kids and they're the dregs of society and they're going to rise up.
It's a bit Fagin, isn't it?
Yeah. They're going to rise up and dismantle the whatever. The Sinner 6 all drawn really horribly as well.
Oh, yeah.
But that's just consistent with the style at this point.
Yeah, that was one of the first illustration of one of the Sinner 6 was, I think, one of the worst. Like, look at the state of his traps.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's just...
The proportions are all wrong at every page.
Yes.
There's a kid who's talking about, like, this diatribe about the cage and the keys and the lock and, like, trying to get this girl to follow him into the alley, which is bad in itself. It looks pretty bad, but he's like, no, he couldn't just be like, hey, there's secret resistance, like, come here, shush, there's no one around. He's like, the cage and the keys and the locks, and it's like, what are you doing? No one talks like this.
Certainly not children.
Especially not children. Pretentious adults might.
Yeah, and again, it's just sort of, I keep using this expression, but it's so heavy-handed.
Again, we are just going to keep saying that because that's most of what it is.
The overwhelming sense of this comic book is that it is a bit heavy-handed.
Yeah. So the next note I made was concerning Hypno Hustler.
I mean, you've skipped most of issue 2 there.
Well, because probably not much interesting happened, I guess. I mean, if you want to hear anything before Hypno Hustler, go ahead.
No. I mean, I just kind of want to get that. I just want this to be as far in my past as it can be, Ryan.
So they bring up, again, I'll lightning round these like notes that I've got, and you jump in if you have any particular part you want to talk about. They bring in Hypno Hustler for seemingly no reason, like literally just they kind of fridge him if he was a girlfriend of the main character, which he's not, obviously, but he's an old villain, like a real C-list, D-list villain. And they bring him back, and he's like, actually, I hate this Rain government now, and I've got this music that makes people dance, because that's probably was my thing back in the day. And then the Rain guards are like, oh, we're being forced to dance. It's like, oh, it's working. And then his batteries run out.
Yes.
And they go, oh, we're fine now. And then they just shoot him in the head. And I was reading that, I was like, what was the point in that?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it further establishes that in this world you're not allowed music anymore.
But you could have just had a random, like, why did you have to introduce this character?
I mean, yeah,
you've already established that the guards are mean to the civilians if they do anything out of turn. Why did you have to bring in Hypno Hustler for this? I don't care about Hypno Hustler, but I feel enraged on his behalf. I'm like, why did you do this character dirty by just sacrificing for a point that you've already made several times?
Yes.
What was the reason?
It's also just apparently at some point they were talking about Donald Glover playing the Hypno Hustler.
Yeah. Apparently that was so it was rumored. It was only rumored and reported, but apparently it was his idea.
Also,
but you know what? An Atlanta-themed Hypno Hustler film would be amazing.
Do you know what I'm going to say, though?
No.
Well, I'm just now looking at some old illustrations of the Hypno Hustler. I've just been on Google Images looking at some pretty racist shit, Ryan.
Pretty stereotypical depictions.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's called the Hypno Hustler. I didn't realize he was black. In this
because
comic.
everyone is grey.
Because everybody's grey. Yeah, everybody's old and grey. But you can't just straight up call a black character the Hustler. In 2024.
Unfortunately, they did back then.
Oh yeah, no, they could and they did. Okay, grim. That's a feature of Spider-Man history that I'm just not a fan of.
You'll find a feature like that in most old superhero histories.
I suppose
unfortunately, I've got to the part where the writer does an interesting thing. He does a plot device that I think is renownedly criticized when you see it happen in fiction.
Yeah,
and then in the narration, he goes, I'm doing this plot device.
Is it the Deus Ex Machina?
It's the Deus Ex Machina.
I sent you a screenshot of that bubble, didn't I? So
he does a Deus Ex.
He does.
And he goes, I'm doing a Deus Ex.
Not only does he do that, he does a Deus Ex Machina, explains its root in Greek fucking tragedies, and then just carries on doing a Deus Ex Machina.
Sorry. And just to clarify things, so a Deus Ex Machina, for anyone who doesn't know, it's a literary trope that is basically in all fiction, and it's when a main character, or any character, is in a situation where it looks like all is lost, and, how could they possibly get out of this? The tension is raised, and then something happens out of nowhere that just happens to save the character. That's the Deus Ex, right?
Yeah, and it in Greek, I mean, they talk about it here in Greek fiction. It was a translation of the actions of God or whatever. God of the machine, essentially. Yeah. But so I was always under the impression, and correct me if I'm wrong, I always thought to point out a Deus Ex Machina, like to point out it happening in a story in fiction, was a criticism. Is that not the case? Of course it is. Why is he like, I'm doing a Deus Ex Machina? I don't know. Why did he... It doesn't... It bothered me at the time, Ryan. So baffling. He's literally gone, that thing that is a criticism of stories, I'm going to do it and tell you I'm doing it while I'm doing it. So, on Sunday evening, I'm going to let you into my day a little bit. I went for a walk, and I went to a greengrocer's that I really like. And I bought some nice vegetables to make myself a biryani with, right? And then I went to my local pub that I work in and I ordered a Coke. And I sat and I was going to read all 4 issues of this. I made it to this point and I went, fuck it. not only am I not reading any more of this tonight, I'm getting a fucking McDonald's. It made me so sad that I couldn't cook for myself, Ryan.
I'd love to speak to the author and be like, why? Why did you do this?
I imagine he's working at Lonely Planet at this point.
I mean, he's working... Lonely Planet?
The comic book store.
Which one?
It's just a big chain of comic book stores.
No, it's like I showed you. He's still writing comics, and they're much better than what he did here in 2007.
Oh, I just don't know, Ryan.
It's
really broken me.
I mean, it might be the worst. No, it's not the worst part. We're getting to the worst part. This is the second worst part.
Yeah.
I did like, and this does lead into it.
I don't want it.
I know. I don't care if you like or not. I did like the Doc Ock reveal of why he actually was. So Doc Ock is Spider-Man's fighting the Sinister Six. He's getting beat up, and the Deus Ex Machina is Doc Ock turns up and just pulls him out of the fight and runs away with him, basically. Yeah. And you go, if you ignore the whole Deus Ex bollocks, you go, well, like, what's Doc Ock going to be? Why is he saving him? I do like the reveal, and it turns out that Doc Ock, his arms are operating independent of him because he is dead.
Yeah.
So his arms are carrying around his dead body, but he's also uploaded like an AI, or at the very least a recording of himself into the arms.
Yeah.
I liked that. I thought that was a cool thing. I thought it was kind of metal, like a corpse walking along, and it reveals his face. And it's one of the few times where the art is actually suitable.
Is actually okay.
How horrible his corpse looks is like actually supports the art.
His gnarled, withered corpse.
Yes. So I like that. But then, I mean, we'll get into it. I did like after this, the reveal of the real bad guy. I enjoyed it. Yeah. Well, it's not the mayor, is it?
No.
So JJ gets captured. He gets close to the mayor, and he gets the knife off him that he somehow got, and he basically spiels like, I think I know what you are, and I just need to prove it. I just need to get close to prove it, kind of thing. And he stabs the mayor, and the mayor's just bleeding out of his neck. And JJ's like, whoops, I got that wrong. Turns out I was wrong about that. And then it turns out that the mayor's assistant, who's always been like a sinister character next to the mayor, is Venom, basically. The Venom, the symbiote. So when you were talking earlier about when we were talking earlier about the guy at the table, in the IV and everything, I think that was Eddie Brock, who was the original Venom host. So I think the idea is the Venom symbiote has kept Eddie alive. He's moved on from him, but he's kept him alive as like, I don't want to kill you, I don't hate you, but you know, I can't have you going around telling people what I'm doing, so I'll keep you trapped here. But again, never explicitly tells that, does it?
The other thing that happens in this issue is the mayor does the press conference saying that he's not going to stop being mayor.
Fair enough. That's a very common political thing these days.
Cancels all elections. Yeah. Like, I'm here until this job is done. And again, you know, just kind of leaning on the dystopian thing. So how did you feel about the Venom reveal?
I thought it was interesting. I didn't see it coming.
Venom.
Venom. It's like a Frank Sinatra, like Venom.
Venom's here.
Yeah, it was surprising. I didn't know it was coming, and I was like, oh, cool. Like that's interesting. It made sense of what I was saying earlier, the removal of the bells and the metal cross and stuff. He was getting rid of metal things on buildings because he knew he was going to release Venom creatures on the city. Those are things that you might not know this before we get into one of the symbiote's weaknesses. Their main weakness, essentially, is sound reverberations. So the bell in the church, and that was another admittedly clever part in it. The bell in the church was a planned defense by JJ, who strongly suspected it was Venom. He was like, these people will be safe because they can bang the bell, and the sound reverberation from the bell is what stops symbiotes, essentially.
Oh.
Yeah. Did you ever see Spider-Man 3, Tobey Maguire?
A long time ago.
I don't know if you remember the scene where he's in the church and he's ripping the symbiote off him. Like, that's because the church bell is, he works that out, and that's how he gets it off him.
Right. So do you think a more engaged Spider-Man reader would have clocked that quite quickly?
Well, I didn't. So, because I don't think they did it I know. It's just something where now that when you pointed out, I'm retroactively going, okay, I suppose that was kind of clever. The bell in the church, I think, was the one I remembered and thought back to. I completely forgot about the removal of the buildings because it was such a small bit. But I suppose, like, if you're rereading it, why would you? But if you were rereading it, you might be like, oh, that's going to be because of later, when I first read it or something. But I like the bell in the church. I thought that was a cool thing. I like that girl is being chased by the Venom monsters and she runs into the church knowing they're chasing. She's telling a joke in her narration.
Yes.
The joke is was it two people on a safari, spot a lion, and one of the safari people changes into their running shoes. And the second guy goes, why are you changing into your shoes? You can't outrun the lion. And he goes, it's not the lion I have to outrun. So fine, good joke. And she's telling that. And then she runs into the church and the Venom monsters just start attacking the people in the church and absorbing them into. And I go, is she just literally using these people, like sacrificing the resistance that she just joined to get away? And I made the note and I was like, is that what she did? And then she starts ringing the bell and they get off the people because they are harmed by the race. I went, okay, that was smart as well.
And again, the last half of this comic book almost, issue 3 and 4 are all kind of endgame, aren't they?
I'm pretty sure we've got to the radioactive reveal, haven't we?
Oh, yeah. No, the radioactive reveal is in issue 4.
Okay, right. My notes are already there, so if there's any parts in issue 3 you still want to talk about...
No, I mean, there's just a general ramping up. A doctor sews back together the mayor. Like, nothing really particularly interesting happens, does it?
No, you don't fully see Venom yet, do you?
No, here's the last panel of issue 3.
I did like the art on Venom. Again, that grungy kind of look. Again, exclusively indoors, so there's no CGI background.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big splash panel. It's fine.
It suited the character for me. Like, I was like, he looks kind of cool in that. But again, because he's indoors and it's all the same style of art, like it looks consistent for one panel at least.
Yeah. So issue 4, the end game, the last quarter is all just kind of action, isn't it?
I mean, we get the radioactive reveal first, which I think we're at that point to talk about that now, aren't we? It's the worst dialogue I think I've ever read in a comic.
So this is the bit where we find out...
It's less funny when you have to actually read it. As a concept, it's hilarious. If anyone does know and ignored the part at the beginning of the podcast, do you want to tell it? Or
it turns out that because of the cumulative effect of Peter Parker's semen being radioactive, Mary Jane died of long exposure to radiation because of his radioactive cum.
Or as you said, he got Mary Curie'd.
He Mary Curie'd her. I think that having read it now, though, I feel a bit guilty using that example because Mary Curie was a fucking genius and did a lot for humanity.
Oh yeah, she did that shit on purpose. Like she knew she was dying, so she knew what was going to happen to her, but she needed to do this experimentation and research for the betterment of mankind, essentially.
Yeah, she was kind of a hero.
Yeah, absolutely, a pioneer in her work. Whereas this comic is. It's radioactive semen,
and do you know she was overlooked in her time.
There's a series coming out, or is already out. I think Rosamund Pike plays her, but it's literally about that. It's about how her and her husband were both on the research, and they were like, "Oh, we kind of have to take your name off because you're a woman." Like that. It's that.
No one will take it seriously.
Yeah. So the dialogue in that part is absolutely awful.
It's so weird.
He's like, my radioactive blood, and not just my blood, but other fluids, and he's crying into a corpse while he's saying it, and it's just awful. You didn't need to do this. You could have, for zero effort, you could have not included that in this comic.
Yeah.
You did not need to do this at all, and you did anyway.
Yeah, so this happens after his first confrontation with Venom.
Yeah. Also, another point, Doc Ock takes him to the cemetery, and even Spider-Man goes, I wonder why he took me here. And Doc Ock is like, I knew you'd be like this, and I knew before I died, I knew you'd be needing my help, and I'd need to make you the man again, and Ragnarok and Hades and exchanging souls and stuff. And it's like, you've Deus Ex'd so hard you can't explain your character's actions. Why would Doc Ock know he needed this specific help at this specific time before he died?
Yeah,
and even Peter Parker goes, I wonder how he knew this. Never explained. Explained.
Because he couldn't have, and he didn't. That's the point, isn't it?
Because he was a Deus Ex.
Because he was a fucking Deus Ex, yeah.
He's the most Deus Ex I've ever read.
Yeah, it's abysmal all the way through.
It's worse than, the most common one I know of is the tank in, I think, Saving Private Ryan.
yeah.
And but even that is like, well, there were tanks in the area. It was a war. Like, there was constantly moving of infantry and stuff. And the timing was the biggest Deus Ex of that part.
Yes.
This is like, what if Doc Ock just knew that he would need help at this point?
I mean, also, the at the end of Saving Private Ryan, the people who were on the tank knew what was going down. Do you know what I mean? They knew what needed to happen and stuff.
That's what I mean. So the timing was the Deus Ex aspect, because they arrived at the right time.
Yeah, totally. But here it's just this character. I mean, and again, comic books are rife with this bullshit. I always point this out, don't I?
Yeah.
That there is I've named it.
To differing levels.
I have named it the Deus Ex character.
Yes.
Like a bunch of like whenever there is a problem, a new character turns up and resolves it for people.
It's a shame that Doc Ock didn't do I'm here and I'm me and I'm going to help.
Yeah, I'm here to save you. Yeah, hello, citizen.
Don't worry, it's me. And then his name in the logo, Dr. Octopus. It's logo font.
Have you seen Dr. Horrible?
I know, but I've heard it's Neil Patrick Harris.
Patrick Harris and
Nathan Fillion.
Nathan Fillion.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of moments where Nathan Fillion's character turns up and he's like, Captain Hammer's here to save you. And that's how I feel every time I see this happen in a comic book. I hear Nathan Fillion.
I mean, the most
Captain Hammer's here.
The most ham-fisted Deus Ex character was the Flashpoint, because it happened several times in a row, and every time it's just bold-faced.
When an emaciated Superman turns up.
They're rescuing Superman, and then Metamorpho woman turns up.
Oh, fuck, it's so bad. I think this is worse, Ryan.
Oh, yeah, 100% this is worse.
I think this is worse because that is just pure superhero shenanigans, right?
Yeah.
But a dystopian future where a villain has really integrated itself into the machinations of government.
Yeah.
And they've created this tight dystopian future. An old man, Peter Parker, still grieving for Mary Jane, who died at his hands. They love to watch Peter Parker grieve for people that have died because of him.
Absolutely.
So we're watching an old Peter Parker grieving, have to come out of retirement as an old, frail man and do some superheroing. This has all of the elements that make the kind of comic I like to read. I love
it's why The Dark Knight Returns is so good.
Yeah, exactly. And there's so much in here that's laudable, and there's so much they try to do that's so interesting, but it's just executed horribly.
Yeah,
like I could forgive.
That's why it's The Room.
I could forgive the art if the writing was good. I could forgive the writing if the art was beautiful. But it's all just so bad. You're right. It's The Room of comic books.
It's The Room because it not only they didn't just make it wasn't just a run of the mill. We need to churn out a story for a character. It wasn't just like you're doing the new Spider-Man run and it's just bad, like Amazing Spider-Man. It was this such high expectation. This is going to be deep. It's going to be dark. It's going to be gritty. It's going to be sad. It's going to be violent. And they thought it was going to be so good and so deep. And they just made every bad decision that you could possibly make on this comic.
So ham-fisted, even down to the very last panel.
Oh, we'll get there. We will get there.
Well, I don't think there's anything left to talk about here.
So again, our lightning round. He buried his original Spider-Man costume. So we hadn't seen the original costume yet. He buried it in the coffin with MJ.
Oh, yeah. So he exhumed it to get it back, right?
Doc Ock did it.
Oh,
and again,
right.
Peter goes, how did Doc Ock know that my costume was in MJ's grave? What? I agree, Spider-Man. How did he know? It's impossible for him to have known that.
Also, young Peter Parker was quite a well-muscled guy. That costume would have drowned him.
Young Peter Parker looks exactly like that guy at the beginning. It's just the same guy, essentially.
He does, doesn't he?
Yeah. The fourth cover, I don't know if you've seen the fourth cover, the blood is orange, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. But they needed to make it orange so that it played off against the red Superman suit.
Superman?
Spider-Man.
But then don't put blood in. Like, if the options are the blood has to be orange or don't put blood in, don't put blood in.
And Venom voring Spider-Man, which is what this is. You know about vor?
Yeah, it's the mouth thing, like in the mouth bollocks, isn't it?
Like Spider-Man getting vored by Venom would have been a powerful enough cover.
Yeah.
You didn't need...
You didn't need orange blood.
Also, looking at the blood, it looks like it was added in MS Paint.
Yeah, it looks awful.
Look at it. I could have done that.
Yeah, 100%. I
There's
fully
a
agree.
sad face.
Yeah.
One of the blood spatters makes a sad face. It's just so bad, Ryan.
And, God knows. The Hope speech that the kid makes, the Daughters of Hope, was it?
Oh, fuck off. It's just so ham-fisted.
I cringed at that part. I was like, why are you saying this now? It makes no sense.
My current favourite reference point for like an elaborate speech in fiction is Community.
Yeah.
You know how Jeff Winger's speeches are supposed to be ham-fisted and they're supposed to be really overblown?
I think they started earnestly and then they kind of get meta, like they become the show becomes self-referential about it, which is the best thing you can do with that kind of stuff. It makes it fun.
But his speeches are more poignant and powerful than these, and they are played off for comedy.
Yes, exactly. The parody is better
point I was getting at
than this attempt.
The parody of an emotive speech is more powerful than this.
I've got a screenshot, so I'm going to read it out. Because I'm going to make everyone else suffer as well.
Okay.
So this kid who has just appeared, this young girl, she's just appeared throughout the story with seemingly no connection to any character. We'll get to that. She's standing up to the rain soldiers, like that V for Vendetta scene, where they're all wearing the mask and the capes and everything. And she goes,
"We are one, we are a legion."
Yeah. She says, "Let me tell you a thing about Hope. Hope has 3 daughters. Anger at the state things have fallen into, courage to fight to make things right, and the 3rd daughter is truth." Now, the problem with this is, it's number one, it's bollocks, but it's such bollocks that you could just replace it. I wish I'd pre-prepared this, but I'm going to try and wing it. You could replace this with anything, and it means the same thing. You could be like, "Let me tell you a thing about hunger. It has 3 daughters. The expectation of food, imagining the taste, and the feeling of emptiness in your belly." Like it's that structure. You could put anything in that. The daughters of a thing. I don't know if the microphones have picked up a siren, but siren's just gone past.
I mean, it's pressing.
Yeah.
Like
it's you could put anything. It's like a Mad Lib.
Yes.
We don't have them in England, but it's an American thing. You could replace these. X has 3 daughters, and they are Y, Z, and A. Like, fill your boots. Just put whatever you want in there. It doesn't matter. It's all bollocks. So that was fun. I cringed at that. The reveal of the girl who makes that speech.
Yeah, right.
Completely out of nowhere. Yeah. I did not see it coming at all. So one of the Sinner 6, which I keep having to cautiously correct myself on that, is Sandman. And he is a common Sinister 6 character, so fair enough. Turns out this girl is his daughter.
Yeah, for no reason.
For no reason other than for this scene where she's like, "Hey, you don't even know me, but I'm your daughter. And also I turn into cement." What? Why? You could take out the cement turning part and it wouldn't make any difference at all.
Because it's all batshit.
And I give this the story of the story of Sandman. He does have a daughter who's ill, and that's why he does crime. So he has like this bittersweet, he's bad, but he's got this reason for doing it.
He saves Ryan.
He saves, and he turns into sand. And that's where we will leave that. But he gets the sand powers after this daughter. So why this girl has cement powers is beyond me.
Well, it's all beyond me.
You could take out the powers, and it wouldn't make any difference at all. And then she dies.
Yes, needlessly. There's even though she's been there for the full 4 issues, I had no attachment to her.
No, exactly. But then when she died, I was like, well, that was a bit
anticlimactic.
And the reason is it motivates Sandman to do some stuff later, basically. Yeah. It's like, oh, well, now he doesn't care and he's going to self-sacrifice. Spoiler, whatever. I did enjoy Spider-Man killing some of the Sinister 6. Yes. I did get a little bit of that's fun.
Watching old man Spidey go rogue.
Yeah, and quipping as well. Or killing. Very Deadpool, but Deadpool is a offshoot of Spider-Man, essentially. Bit of a rip-off of Spider-Man. I will admit that as a Deadpool fan.
Yeah, absolutely.
Incidentally, little tangent. Deadpool trailer just came out. Looks amazing. I'll show you
Does
afterwards.
it?
I think you'll like it. I think
Okay.
you'll like the look
What,
of it.
Deadpool 3?
Deadpool 3, yeah. It's got another title, but I won't tell you the title until you've seen the trailer because
Okay.
it kind of gives away. But yeah, he's killing the Sinister Six. Buddy, Electro and Hydra Man are like, let's
Yes.
team up. And Spider-Man's like, you fucking idiots. Like, you are each other's weakness. Like, what are you doing? It just kills, it just knocks one into the other. They die. But even, I like that. Even Spider-Man's like, what are you doing for?
Yes.
Like, just kills Scorpion by... Scorpion's like, I've got upgrades, and they do all sorts of stuff. And Spider's like, can they fly? And he's like, huh? And just bangs and knocks him out of a building and dies. And I liked the little cool part where Spider's like, he looks real sad. He says something like, he looks like a 3-year-old as he's falling helplessly.
Yeah, he's an old man, but
yeah.
he looks like he's 3 as he falls.
Almost makes me feel sorry for him. And then just closes in. Almost. And I'm like, that's cool. I like this.
I mean, again, it's not hard to write Spider-Man.
It's simple.
You make up some quips.
Yeah, it's simple but effective because it's just fun. Yeah. I tell you what, if this was a normal comic, I'd just be like, this is just the normal stuff. This is like finding water in a desert. Like, this scene is like, oh my God, I'm actually having fun. Like, it's been 4 issues and I'm having a little bit of fun with this part. Like, oh my God. I'm like choking on the water because I'm like so desperate. Oh my God. Then it ruins it because it gets to the Craven part. And Craven, for some reason, this really doesn't even matter at all in the grand scheme of things. But Craven is like, I'm going to take this poisonous hallucinogenic because it's cool to do that before a fight.
Yeah.
And he's like, I know, Spider-Man, that you never inhaled it because your mask keeps out of you. And then Spider-Man's like, not this time. Pulls his mask up, takes a whiff. Like, oh, what would you know? It's all the dead people that hate me or that I blame myself for their deaths. But I'm going to run through them to show that I've got rid of this guilt for no reason, no prompt whatsoever. He's just got over it, and now he runs through him. And then Craven's like, oh shit, my hallucinogenics makes him a rhino. It's like, because you took hallucinogenics.
Because you're
Why would you do that?
I can't imagine anybody being like, I'm about to have a fight. Quick, give me some acid.
Yeah. That's
Let's
what he
get
does.
spangled.
He also, the scene where I missed this part going back. Spider-Man's costume is in the coffin that Mary Jane's in. He gets in the coffin to change into the costume.
Yes.
That's why. Surely the worst place to do a dress change is in a coffin, right? But then he busts out and the rule is he's put on the mask, so he's quippy Spider-Man again, right? Fair enough. That's been established. I've already got across that I like that. But as he's busting out, he goes, where there's a bang up, here comes the Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Like that. That was meant to be like a real poignant, like, he's back. And he just does like the most
Spider-Man,
cringy quip.
Spider-Man.
Yeah. And it's in a font and everything for some reason.
It's, again, like, I feel like I've been so succinct in my evaluation of this comic that I'm finding it hard to
say anymore.
Yeah, because my response to everything is, yes, it's really heavy-handed.
Yeah, at this
it's
point,
a big swing and a miss, isn't it?
At this point, I'm just ranting without expectation. Like that's why it's lightning round ranting, because it's the end of the comic and there's not much else to say about it except it ends.
And it ends poorly.
He punches Mysterio, who pretends to be his dead wife.
Yeah.
And Spider-Man said, "This is a horrific line." That if it was from Deadpool, it would have been funny because that's Deadpool's style.
Yeah.
But from Spider-Man, it's just weird. He says, and he's knocked out Mysterio, and he says, and by the way, never pretend to be someone's dead wife unless they pay you to. What?
Right?
What? Spidey, come on.
Because that is Deadpool shit, isn't it?
Yeah, that's Deadpool shit. Like it's dark and funny, and it's a bit cringe, but that's Deadpool. Like that's the style. It just made me stop and go, what? And then I remembered what comic I was reading. I went, oh yeah, actually this is nothing compared to everything else.
So, would you recommend it?
I'm not done.
Oh, can we be done?
No, because then at one point he gets to Venom, and Venom says, so Venom used to be on Spider-Man. That's their relationship. That's why he looks like Venom.
Yeah.
He says, we all want to taste you, Spider. I told them all how you made me feel. What?
I glossed over that.
What? And I
told them all how you make me.
Yeah, exactly. And he would make that noise because Venom has the tongue. And then he leads all the Venom monsters onto the tower.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, see them. Everyone's watching me risk my life for this. He gets to the top, and then Sandman, who turns up, is like, yeah, my daughter just died, so I've got nothing to live for now, so here's the detonator to all our bombs. It's like, oh yeah, the bodies of all the Sinister Six, whatever, are in this tower, all the monsters are on top. We can explode them and save the day. What was your plan before that, Spider-Man? What were you going to do?
I hadn't considered that. What was
Were
his
you
plan?
literally just leading them up there to die? Because, fine.
That saves nobody.
That achieved nothing. It's literally suicide by Venom. Like that, literally
suicide by Venom.
But he wasn't even sacrificing himself for anyone because they would have killed him, and then they just would have fucked off and done evil in the sea. That was his plan. And then Sandman's like, by the way, do you want this detonator? So I was like, oh, brilliant! Like a way out. Like fantastic.
A Deus Ex Machina.
It's worse than a Deus Ex Machina because the character had no plan, but he made it seem like he had a plan. And
oh god!
And then the very end, there's a grave, I think, with Peter Parker or something.
It's Mary Jane's grave.
Oh, okay, it's Mary Jane's. But it turns out Spider-Man's back, and he's badder than ever. But it's just a silhouette, so you can't tell properly. That was when I was like, this wants to be the Dark Knight Rises so hard. Dark Knight Returns so hard. All right. I'm done. That's all. I've got it on my system.
So,
would I recommend?
Would you recommend it?
In the same way that I would recommend people to watch The Room.
No, because The Room is better than this.
For me, I was having a good time by the end.
Well, you actually?
Yeah, I was like, this is bad. This is bad. Why'd you do this?
Enjoying its flaws.
Yes, exactly. I was enjoying how, again, it's far better than boring.
At no point was I ever able to enjoy this as high comedy.
No, not high comedy. The Room's not high comedy. It's a weird, unique type of comedy where it's unintentional, but that makes it better.
Yeah, I thought that's what high comedy was.
It's subtly high comedy. I'd say is intentionally complex. Like
surely,
yeah, exactly.
I can't wait for that.
But this story is The Room because it's so subtly clear how bad the execution was, but how, again, lofty and high the goals were for it. And that's what, by the end, at the beginning, I was as angry at it as you were.
Well, I don't know if I was angry at it. Just by the end, I was like, I just needed it to be over. To be clear, if I hadn't been reading this for this...
You wouldn't have finished it.
I wouldn't have finished it.
No.
I never would have been able to finish this had I not been reading it for this exact purpose.
Yeah. But I was marveling at how the wrong, like, this is the thing with The Room. They get everything wrong in it.
Totally.
And that's what I was getting from this. By the end, I was marveling by how many bad decisions could be made in this 4-issue comic.
Yeah, it's not a long run, and it got published and was apparently well received, wasn't it?
Who are these critics? I need to meet
Who
these
are
people.
these readers?
But the thing is, the readers could have just bought it, and they could have had my reaction. They could have been like, this is horrible. I'm going to buy the next issue because it's and this is the thing.
I need to know, yeah.
This is the thing. My enjoyment of it is compared to, and you must empathize with this, the worst thing anything could be is boring.
Yeah, and
when you're reading or watching or experiencing whatever, playing whatever, something for an experience, the worst is boring.
Yeah, like The Ones was boring.
Yes. But the ones had way better art than this, like, absolutely.
He did, didn't he?
Yeah.
God, gee, we found something that is worse than The Ones in any way at this point.
I don't think we had an issue with The Ones' art. It was
dialogue. We couldn't tell the difference between the characters.
No, they were quite distinct, I think.
Oh, do you not remember?
I think if you look at the front cover, they were, because they were all different archetypes of the Ones, so they all looked quite different. Maybe there was one or two that were looked
really
too similar. But yeah, this, I marveled, ironically, at the end of just, again, all the bad mistakes that were being made, how it kept getting worse and worse. And that was my experience of it. So I would recommend it on that basis. I'm guessing you would not.
No, I would not.
Okay.
Are
you eager to finish?
No, what I'm doing is I'm just double checking to see if there are, and you can cut this out, just looking to see if there are any fun reviews.
I will say this, part of the reason we're doing this now is to tie in with a film that's coming out called Madam Web. And the reason that that's interesting is because Sony are really, really bad at making Spider-Man films that don't involve Spider-Man. So the deal they currently have now with Marvel is Marvel helps them with Spider-Man films. Marvel made a deal with Sony, who own Spider-Man and all the movie rights to him and all his associated characters, that any Spider-Man films would be, part of the Marvel MCU, so they can essentially share the character. problem is Sony were like, well, we have the rights to all these other characters. So there's a thing where every Marvel character, as you've probably gleaned this by now, every big character has about 100 side characters that kind of exist within their story. And they get, passed across and stuff, and you see them in other stories, but like most characters have their side characters. Sony are trying to make their own cinematic universe out of Spider-Man's side characters. So they had a little bit of success with Venom. The only saving grace of Venom is Tom Hardy's performance. Tom Hardy does a good performance as him, and he plays Venom as well. It's fun. They play off each other. That's the only good part. It's one of the few good parts about the film. Then they made Morbius. Do you know anything about Morbius?
No, not a scoop.
So Morbius was a bad film starring Jared Leto. He's a vampire guy. They tried to shoehorn it into the Spider-Man universe by having Spider-Man like in the background of a trailer.
Yeah.
And then he wasn't in it. And then they said that Michael Keaton was playing the Vulture, reprising his role from Homecoming. And then he was in a post-credit scene, which is the worst post-credit scene I've ever seen in my life. It's horrible. They put it together really last minute. Literally, Michael Keaton transfers into this universe because of shit that happens in Far From Home. Completely random, but part of it. Okay. And he gets out of prison because he's in a prison in a different universe, and they're like, you're not a prisoner here, we're going to let you go. And then he somehow gets his Vulture gear, which he didn't come over with, and then he finds Morbius, and he goes, yeah, I came over to this universe, probably had something to do with Spider-Man. 100%, that is word for word. I've not ad-libbed that. That is 100% the script. And Morbius goes, interesting. It's just bad.
Yeah, I'm not there for it.
The funny thing about Morbius was, it came out, and it bombed.
Well, as it would.
But then all the memes start happening. So basically, the memes were like, people talking about like, I loved Morbius. I loved the part where he said, it's Morbin time. Like, that was the funny meme.
It's Morbin time.
Exactly. So that was a meme. So what happened was, Sony thought, a lot of people like these Morbius memes. Let's re-release it and capitalize on the popularity of the memes. And do you know what happened?
It flopped.
It bombed again. It bombed a second time. They lost more money on top of the money they'd already lost.
Because just because something's a meme, it doesn't mean the source material is going to be popular.
Whoever's making the decisions at Sony do not understand anything about the fandom or modern
I imagine
culture.
They're old white men, aren't they?
They're idiots. And then, well, the joke after that was everyone was going, all right, we're serious now. If you release it a third time, we promise we will go this time.
We will go and see it this time.
Yeah. So,
because it only takes one person to watch it to make a meme of it.
Exactly.
Like, that's the thing. Like, you don't need to know the source material for a meme to be funny.
I watched it just because I heard the post credits was bad, because I couldn't fathom how a post credits is bad.
Yeah,
and it is. It's horrible. The actual film itself, boring as sin.
Right.
Like, absolutely not worth it. Although Matt Smith, great in it. That's
Matt
the
Smith's
one little
great.
Diamond in the rough. He's
Matt
very
Smith's
fun.
Always
in it,
fantastic.
Yeah. Wasted on this film by far.
But he's brilliant in everything.
And Jared Leto's a weird, creepy cult leader. So fuck him. And then
the Dandy Warhols would be very upset. Is that his band, Dandy Warhols?
I don't. No, it was 30 Seconds to Mars.
30 Seconds.
Yeah.
The Dandy Warhols.
I don't know where you got that from.
Band.
Then they released the trailer for Craven, starring Aaron Taylor Johnson, I think his name. And that just looks random. They're like, he's a villain. And they're like, actually, no, he's a good guy now. He's like a mercenary kind of thing. It's like, all right, Craven doesn't really have any powers. He kind of enhances himself with like weird mystical stuff. And like that, he's like a kind of mystical, but kind of weird hunter character. It's like, okay, so in this, he's got radioactive lion's blood. It's like, what are you doing? Why?
And then his wife dies.
And Russell Crowe's his dad for some reason.
Old man fat Russell Crowe.
Yeah. So the trailer comes out for that. It's like, and everyone was like, this looks really bad. Like, what are you doing this for? Then they released the Madam Web trailer. And the Madam Web film is coming out this week, or it will have come out by the time. The reviews are horrible, obviously.
Are they?
It's coming out this week. It will have come out after this episode releases. The trailer is one of the worst trailers I've ever seen. To the point where the comment...
Yes, I watched it. It was bad.
I showed you. The consensus was they'd taken a CW show, which is like a teeny drama kind of channel. It's like, and they've made it into a full film. Like, it looked fan-made.
Mm.
And it had dialogue like, this was like the time when my mum worked in the jungle studying spiders before she got murdered. Like, that was a line in the trailer, which they since have changed because they knew how bad it was, because they saw all the comments, and they just went in and sinisterly, like, just snuck in and, like, changed in the trailer, hope no one would know.
Edit.
But we saw it. We all saw it. So that comes out. Apparently it's horrible. I can't wait to see it. I'm not going to pay, obviously, but I can't wait to see it.
Should we go and watch it together?
We could. Maybe. We might do that. So, yeah, I thought I'd tie in with this, and maybe we'll come back with a review of Madam Web.
Yeah, that could be an extra episode. That could be a sneaky extra one.
All right, I'm done. I've got it all out. I had fun.
Well done.
Fun with it.
I had a good time. I enjoyed listening to you rant, so thank you for that.
It's not often, like, it's only bad Spider-Man that really gets me going.
It's usually me that's the ranty one.
Yeah, well, I think you kind of softly, like, I didn't like this. You have ranted with Spider-Man art before.
Yes.
So it's like you lost the fire for this.
Yeah.
You know what the difference was? I think with
I'm jaded. I'm more jaded than you.
Amazing Spider-Man, I think it was close to being like okay, but but there was such glaring issues. You were like, if you just, I think you were coming from like if you didn't do this, it would be
you would have had me,
acceptable. Yeah. This was just like, why did you make these decisions? All right, I'm done now.
It was a one across the board.
Yeah, I'm done now. Take us home.
So thank you so much for listening. I've had a lovely time. I do just want to highlight a conversation that happened in the comment section of one of our shorts.
Oh, wow.
A couple of months ago now.
Okay.
And one of us has gone through and liked all the comments.
Yeah,
but we've never spoken about it.
Yeah, I just did that. I was like...
So it was the one where we were talking about, in the comic book that had the fake Justice League in it.
Invincible.
Yeah. So it's the short where we talk about the fake Justice League, and I talk about the guy who looks like Batman, but without the Batman is.
Oh, God. I know, these comments.
Somebody said, that's not Batman, that's man. And then somebody else said, Batman, more like Black Man. I don't really understand that one.
I only liked the top comment. I don't think I liked
you didn't like that one.
I only liked the man comment, not the second comment.
No, and that second one, it really confused me because I don't fully understand what they're on about.
I don't think they knew.
The last one really amused me. It just says, British people be like.
Yeah.
But they've spelt British with an apostrophe instead of a T, so it's British. British people be like.
Do you know why there's no T?
Why?
Because we drank it.
Hey!
I'm not going to put the pun in because I don't think that doesn't count. All right. Take us home.
Thank you so much for listening.
Again.
Come back next week. We're going to be talking about Avatar: The Last Airbender.
The what?
The Last Airbender.
I don't know. I'm going to listen back to this because all I heard, I could have sworn you were The Last Airbender. I was like, what?
Is there bear bending?
Don't think so.
We're going to talk about Avatar: The Last Airbender.
You were about to say bear, didn't you?
I was, yeah. I was so about to say it.
Do you want me to leave this all in?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So I've never seen it, but I'm currently watching it. There's a comic book. Ryan says it's really highly regarded. Super excited to delve into the TV show, have a read of the comic, and just talk about this franchise that is beloved by so many.
And there was never a live action film. That's actually a reference you will get to later. But
right,
yes.
Okay. So thank you so much for listening. If you want to leave us a review, do so. Wherever you get your podcast, just make it 5 stars. Say something rude, say something mean, make it about us, make it personal, but make it 5 stars.
Yep.
If you want to send us an email, comicliterate@gmail.com. We are always there. We are always diligent. We are always waiting. Thank you so much for listening, and good night.
I was trying to think of a Spider-Man Rain reference to make at the end, and I couldn't think of any quotes, so I'm just going to say, my fluids. Thank you, goodbye.
All hail Web.